Hello one and all, and welcome to the very first installment of Feisty Feminists, brought to you by the team at Your Angry College Feminists. For today I'd like to focus on some of the most complex and interesting female characters from any set of movies I've seen. These are the women of the Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli film universe. Now, I grew up on these films, and it honestly took me quite some time before I could really appreciate all the subtext and themes, but what's become increasingly important to me lately is realizing just how well Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki portray female characters in their movies. In pretty much every Miyazaki film, female characters are either protagonists or they're integral to the story in ways that far and away exceed any sort of damsel in distress archetype we're used to seeing. In today's installment, I want to focus particularly on Princess Mononoke. It's my favorite Miyazaki film for a host of reasons, but what I think is really remarkable is that the protagonist, while endearing and necessary for the plot to progress, really isn't what drives the story. The important thing is this struggle between two very strong female characters, Lady Eboshi and, of course, Princess Mononoke herself. Now, Lady Eboshi is arguably the most complicated character of the movie, but she is first and foremost a woman in charge, and her authority goes unquestioned by any of the men or women in the small city she leads. Now, in the movie, she opposes military factions, political schemers, and supernatural forces that all pose a threat to the accomplishments that she has worked so hard to build up. Her demeanor is so far removed from the role of victim or emotionally unstable females that we've seen in other parts of media, comic books, movies, that it can initially seem almost cold. However, the story shows us that she's not out for herself at all. She literally saves girls from brothels, gives them employment with some dignity in her own town. She arms them and teaches them how to defend themselves in a world largely aggressive towards them. In this, we clearly see a woman who understands that the world is a terrible place, but she knows how to navigate it. Instead of using that just for her own good, however, she uses her skill and her influence to protect others who society and who the world just doesn't look out for, but for whom she can do some real good. Next up, of course, is Princess Mononoke. Now, this young woman was quite literally raised by wolves. Think badass female Tarzan vibe. What's really interesting about her character is that she possesses all kinds of combat skills and demonstrates them frequently, all while managing to stay fully clothed. Why is she a good role model, though? Because even though she, yes, is the love interest of the male protagonist, she saves him as often as he saves her throughout the course of the movie. She manages to be independent and powerful while still retaining feminine characteristics. At the end of the movie, she is just as responsible for saving the day as the protagonist. And my favorite part about that is that after the day is saved, after the conflict's over and she admits that there is that feeling between them, they don't just rush off into the sunset. The story sort of makes it clear that they both have different lives to lead, but they enter into this sort of semi-long-distance relationship because they can have that attachment and they can be romantically involved without that same tried, happily ever after trope we're so used to seeing at the end of these kind of stories. That's what I think is most lovely about these two, though. They personify leadership and fierce independence, two characteristics that aren't attributed to female characters often enough in fiction. So they own their confidence in such a way that no one can really give them any grief or dare question their strength solely based on their gender. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what makes them today's feisty feminists.